This is Bishop Dale Bronner. Thank you so much for joining our YouTube channel today. If this is a blessing to you, I want to encourage you to like it and then click the subscribe button and then turn on notification. Hit that little notification bell so that you never ever miss another one of our videos. And then if you're in the Metro Atlanta area on a Sunday, check out one of our exhilarating services at 8:30 a.m., 11 a.m., or 6 o'clock p.m. Our scriptural text today is coming from Numbers chapter 20, verse 2 through 5 in the New Living Translation of Scriptures. Notice there these words. There was no water for the people to drink at that place, so they rebelled against Moses and Aaron. The people blamed Moses and said, "If only we had died in the Lord's presence with our brothers. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into this wilderness to die, along with all our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink." I want to talk today simply from the subject, acres of diamonds. Acres of diamonds. Here the children of Israel were mumbling and grumbling. And I want you to understand that they were mumbling and grumbling after they had witnessed God do all of the 10 incredible plagues that he brought against the Egyptians in order to liberate them. The children of Israel here were mumbling and grumbling after God had parted the Red Sea and they had already come through on dry land. And they were still mumbling and grumbling. Now, sometimes if your attitude is not right, no matter how much people do for you, it still won't make them feel any better towards you. If people feel entitled, if they are narcissistic, you can never do enough. And this is the way that the children of Israel were toward the God who had been so faithful to demonstrate signs and wonders in bringing them out of over 400 years of bondage in Egypt. And God brought them out. And here they were complaining that they were in a place that was destitute, that was a barren land, and that they had no pomegranates and all of the luxuries that they had back in Egypt, longing to enjoy some pleasures while they were still incarcerated, while they were still in bondage. And this reminds me of the story that is entitled The Acres of Diamonds. That was a story that was brought to us by a man by the name of Dr. Russell Conwell. He happened to be a Baptist minister. He was also an attorney, and he's also the founder of Temple University in Pennsylvania. And there he was taking a trip along the Tigris River down and over in the area of the Persian Gulf. And he hired a tour guide there to be able to show him some of the places that he wanted to see along the Persian region. Among some of the places that he was visiting, he had to hire this tour guide in Baghdad, which is present-day Iraq. And he hired him. This is back in 1870. And he hires him, a tour guide, to show him, among some other places, he wanted to see Nineveh. And he wanted to see Babylon. And so he's taking him, and so he gets the tour guide. And the tour guide is one of those people, you know, sometimes when you get a good tour guide, they fill you in with stories. And this tour guide told them this story that he swore was absolutely true. And it was the life of a man by the name of Al-Hafed. Al-Hafed owned a farm there on the Indus River. And it was a beautiful farm with orchids, gardens. He was blessed with a beautiful wife and children and had excess cash and had everything that he needed, had streams running through his property. And it is interesting that he was contented because he was wealthy, but he was wealthy because he was contented. And all of a sudden, an old priest came to visit him one day. And the old priest one night shared with him how the earth was made. and how all of the minerals that were in the earth and how precious metals were formed and precious stones. And it talked to him about how diamonds were formed by carbon under pressure. And this old priest told this old farmer, he said to him, do you realize that actually, if you just had a few diamonds, you would be able to not only have one farm, but many farms, because he told him about the wealth and the value that diamonds carried. This man who had been contented, all of a sudden when he learned about how poor he was now because he didn't have any diamonds, now he was discontented because of his poverty. But he was poor because he thought. He was discontented because he thought he was poor. And so he set out on a journey to travel all through the regions of Persia and going through areas there that wound up in Europe. And after 2 years, after he had sold all of his possessions, he'd gone on this journey. After 2 years, he's broke, busted, and disgusted. And he's walking along the beach in Barcelona, Spain. And a huge wave came up out of the sea and took him under. And he happily submitted himself to it because he felt like he had nothing for which to live. When back home, the farm that he sold so that he could take this journey, the man who owned it was out one day feeding his animals. And all of a sudden, he looked down and saw a glint in the watery sand and stooped down to pick it up, and it happened to be one of the biggest diamond finds in history. And he discovered there not merely one or two, but acres of Golconda diamonds. Acres of them. And they were right there. And the man had sold them for nothing, going on a journey around the world. And the man to whom he sold it discovered that his own home on his own farm was acres of diamonds. Here with Russell Conwell's book, Acres of Diamond, it teaches us a key lesson, that there is no need to look beyond yourself and your immediate circumstances to find the seeds of your future or the seeds of your fortune. And it's interesting that if we just get that lesson, that sometimes if you learn how to appreciate what God has already given you, that there's something of great value that's hidden right in your own mind. Something in your mouth, something in your history, something in your DNA, that there's something that is a wealthy place. You are the wealthy place. It's not something that you find when you go out looking around in the world trying to find your wealth. Your wealth is in you. You have to simply unearth it. All treasure is hidden, and it must be unearthed. And so we get frustrated sometimes because we've got gold in our mouth, but we can't figure out how to get gold in our pocket. And that's what frustrates us. But I want you to realize that diamonds are all of the possibilities that are inherent in human life. If you really want to talk about the metaphor of this, it really speaks of all of the possibilities that are inherent in human life. Those are your diamonds. All of the possibilities that are inherent in human life. But here's what I would say is that before God brings us into provision, he unveils potential. Before he brings us into provision of where you will find your acres of diamonds, he unveils potential that's right where you are. In the same way that Al-Hafed became dissatisfied with what he had after learning about the diamonds, the same thing can happen to us if we fail to be thankful for the blessings that we have, even when we feel like it's not enough. I want you to notice something very key in Luke chapter 9 and verse 16. taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish. How many loaves? How many fish? And then looking up to heaven, this is speaking of Jesus, he gave thanks and broke them, and then he gave them to the disciples to distribute the people. Now here's what I want you to get. I want you to look at this verse real carefully, because Jesus now has 5,000 men to feed, not counting the women and children. It was easily an audience of 20,000 people. He's got to feed that much. Now I want you to look at this verse. Jesus takes a little boy's lunch, what has been surrendered to Jesus. It's not much. And trust me, 5 loaves and 2 fish is not enough to feed 5,000 men, not less 20,000. But notice what he did. He gave thanks for the insufficient food that he had. Can you give thanks when what you have does not seem like it is enough? It didn't say that he gave thanks after they had been multiplied, before the miracle came. When he was still struggling, when he was wondering, oh my God, how am I going to feed all of these people? He gave thanks for 5 and 2. He gave thanks for the little bit that he had, even when it was insufficient. Anybody understand what I'm talking about today? Jesus gave thanks for it. He gave thanks for what he had. Now listen, here's what giving thanks does. Giving thanks actually postures you. It puts you in a place for the supernatural, divine, miracle hand of divine multiplication to happen in your life. When you're thankful for the little, when I'm grateful for the little bit that God gave me. You may not have much, but when you ought to be thankful for the raggedy thing with the roof that may be leaking and the car that chokes off on you and drinks oil like it's gasoline, it may not be the best, but when you can say, Lord, I thank you for what I have. That this may not be the best spouse, but Lord Jesus, I thank you that I am not alone in my struggles. Lord, I don't know who this is for today, but I just want to challenge you that however little that you have, learn to be thankful for that little bit. Jesus didn't wait until it was multiplied to give thanks, because if you're not thankful for your little, you won't be thankful for your, oh my God, my God, my God. What you do is that you take the sacrifice of the little bit, the little that you have. When it's not enough, that means it's a seed. And you don't get harvest unless you sow a seed, because the harvest is locked in the seed. He gave thanks for the seed that wasn't enough to feed. If it's not enough to feed you, it's a seed. Give thanks for the seed. The Bible says that he gives seed to the sower. He gives seed to the sower. He gives seed to the sower, my God. And when the farmer can just be thankful for the seed, my God, you are carriers of seed. You are carriers of divine seed. That's why I said that there are acres of diamonds on the inside of you, because you've got the seed of ideas. But if you're not thankful for the creative mind, if you're not thankful for hands to be able to build and to construct and to repair and to fix things, if you're not thankful for what you've got, I'm just here to tell you, you will curse your future. But if you will be thankful for the seed, even though it's not enough, you will baptize that thing and say, God, I am posturing this and positioning this for your divine glory to come on this and to multiply it and to cause a miracle to come into manifestation. And so I would say to you, count your blessings and then make your blessings count. Count your blessings and then make your blessings count. Count your blessings and then make your blessings count. Because too many people take the position of Moses when Moses got frustrated in his leadership because of the people that were with him, and his frustration caused him to strike the rock in disobedience to God, because God said, Moses, don't strike the rock, speak to it, and the water will come out. Why could not these people trust God when they had seen him part the Red Sea? They had already seen God rain down manna and quail for them. Could he not bring water to them in a place where there was no water? Why couldn't they believe him? Why couldn't they believe him? I want you to notice Numbers chapter 20, verse 6 through 8. Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle, where they fell down on the ground. And then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, "You and Aaron must take the staff and assemble the entire community. As the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and it will pour out its water. You will provide enough water from the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock." Isn't it amazing that God told him, "I'm getting ready to do some hocus pocus. Speak to the rock and water is getting ready to flow." Now, if you take that and bring biblical revelation to it, the rock is a hard situation. Jesus said, "Whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things that he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith." He says, "Speak to the rock, my God. There's a seed, there's power in your mouth. Use what you got. Use what you got." I'm telling you, you got acres of diamonds. Use what you got. Get your mouth lined up. Get your mind lined up. Get your mission lined up. You see, your mouth and your mind ought to be in alignment with your mission. Your mouth and your mind ought to be in alignment with your mission. Your mouth and your mind ought to be in alignment with your mission. Get it lined up. But he took a rod and struck it, and the water came out. They still got the water, but it's not about it. It's about being able to obey God. The greatest sign that you trust God is that you obey him, even when you don't understand him. Let me say that again. The greatest sign that you trust God is that you obey him, even when you don't understand him. So if he tells you something that looks crazy to you, but he wants you to do it. So it's not about getting it done anyway. No. You have to be very specific to do it the way God tells you to do it. He took the rod and struck it. And here's what it's symbolic of. Think of your children like rocks. Think of your spouse like a rock. You strike them, you try to beat them over the head with the rod of the word to get a flow of the Spirit, the water out of them. But God says, don't beat them, speak to them. Speak to them. Speak to the rock. And you can get a flow of the Spirit if you speak the right words to your children. If you speak the right words to your spouse. And most people speak words that cause fires to start, not water that puts fires out. So he said, if you'll learn to speak, if you'll let your mouth be a wellspring of water, you'll get a flow of the Spirit by speaking to a hard situation. A hard situation. Speak to the rock. Speak to the rock and get a flow of the Spirit. People will become what you encourage them to become, not what you try to beat out of them. You can't really beat the devil out. You cast him out with the power of the word. Jesus said, come out of him. He didn't have to get a rod, and beat it out. You can't beat the devil out of your children. The more you beat a rebellious child, the more rebellion that the child gets into, and the sneakier they try to become. Are you listening? But if you will recognize a God image and speak to that image in them of their acres of diamond and show them their potential, my God, you'll get a flow of the Spirit. They'll get a flow of the Spirit. Call those things that be not as though they were. And something divine and supernatural begins to happen. And so, after all that Moses had done on behalf of the people, because he failed to follow God's instruction, he disqualified himself from being able to go into the promised land. Because God says this is critical. This wasn't just about being anal, about not following this thing directly to the letter, but it was talking about being injurious to people when you're trying to beat something out that can only come by the love of God, by the Spirit of the Holy Ghost, not by the law. You don't form people in the character of Christ by bringing the rigidity of the law and striking it over their head. We speak to them in love and watch the Holy Spirit form whoever and whatever needs to be formed in them. But this lack of trust that Moses had at this moment was tantamount with crucifying Christ afresh. He struck the rock twice. It was symbolic of crucifying Christ because Christ was that rock that followed them in the wilderness. Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 6. And that's where we begin to see that this becomes the sin of crucifying Christ afresh, not receiving what he's already done for you. And my question to you is this. I know we can look at Moses and judge Moses for what he did. Moses was under a lot of pressure. So before you get all self-righteous and say, had it been me, I would have done it just like God told me to. You don't know what Moses was dealing with and how he was feeling. And my question to you is, what are you striking out of your frustration? Because you get frustrated on your job. You know the situation, the man gets reprimanded on his job, then he comes home and kicks the dog, and the dog didn't have anything to do with this. But it is something that we are striking out of our frustration. And so when a person comes home and they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders and they're frustrated and they're trying to figure things out and they're trying to figure out what am I going to do and how am I going to pay this and how are we going to deal with that? And you come in under that weight, and out of our frustration we are lashing out with our own rods and striking things that had nothing to do with our frustration. What are you striking out of your own frustration? Because everybody deals with anger and frustration at some point. Here's what frustration is. Frustration is a deep chronic sense or state of insecurity and dissatisfaction arising from unresolved problems or unfulfilled needs. Frustration. Have you ever been in deep chronic sense there, that state of insecurity or dissatisfaction just because of unresolved problems or unfulfilled needs? It comes from the Latin word frustrare, which literally means to deceive. Every frustration is a demonic attempt to try to deceive you that what God promised to you or that what God said is not going to come to pass. So we get frustrated because this doesn't look like that. Just give it time. Give it time. We get frustrated when we got a seed when we were expecting a harvest. And that's what happens to people. They're loaded with seed, but they're asking God, Lord, I need a harvest. I ain't got time for that. Because seed takes time. Seed, time, then harvest. You got to, prepare, plow the ground, the fallow ground. You got to sow the seed. You got to water it, and you got to give it time. And most people don't want the process that time brings. And so in order to successfully master frustration, you have to first recognize what causes it. And for most people, frustration often occurs whenever your actions are producing fewer and fewer results than you think they should. I mean, if you're doing something and you feel like, this is something ain't working here, we get frustrated. I mean, I got frustrated when I went to the gym one day, and I did like 100 sit-ups. I was expecting to see washboard abs after that. Anybody got time for all that? I'm sore the next day. I'm like, bump this. Yeah, I mean, I'm hurting. I'm assuming that I can make this thing happen. But I discovered after time that some of the things that we really want, they don't happen overnight. They happen over time. And so when you're in a situation when you need something, God gives you a goal. If you got a goal, and you're right here, what gets you from the goal, from your starting point to your goal, is a bridge. You know what that bridge is called? It's called a plan. The plan is the daily process of working this thing out in order to make it happen in your life. And most people have all of these goals, but they don't have a plan worth a hoot. And so they lack the plan. And if you lack a plan, it's like a nail that is lacking in a horse's shoe that causes a horseshoe to be lost and a leg to be lost and a horse to be lost and a rider to be lost. And it all happened because of one little thing, because they weren't paying attention to the plan. But if you do the plan, and see, most of the time we want to jump in with great intensity, and we want to go in and work out at the gym for 4 hours in one day and all of a sudden have bulging biceps and triceps and pectoralis majors and all of that in one day with 4 hours and say, man, I put in 4 hours a day. You'll be far better if you put in 20 minutes a day every day and not seeing anything for the first 3 weeks. But after a while, just give it time. Work the plan. Just work the plan. Just work the plan. It's your bridge that gets you from where you are to where you want to be. You got to have a plan. You can't just have a goal and don't have a plan as to how you're going to get there. I can't just say, I want to go to Disney World. I got to map out the plan. Am I going down 75 South from Atlanta? I mean, how am I going to get there? Am I going to fly? Am I going to drive? I got to set the plan. And most goals go unrealized because people don't have the discipline to make the plan and stick to the plan, which is a process because we want it overnight. But when you're frustrated, you feel like my efforts are not looking like the results that I expect from this. Look at this little meme here about never giving up. See the man that was digging for diamonds? He was almost at the wall there. Had he taken his pitchfork on the bottom and hit it one more time, there he would have found all the diamonds. But look at that man on top. He's going for it. He is going for it. Listen, you never know how close you are, so never give up on your dream. Your acre of diamonds could be so close, but you've got to keep going. And some folks are frustrated because they realize that they've got something in them, but they can't have the discipline to work the plan to make it happen. But if God promises you something, His word is good. Not because it's based, the hope that we get from God is not based on wishful thinking, hear me carefully. It is based on the solidity of the character of God. So when God gives you His word, it's not wishful thinking. It's not hope. That's where it's just sort of ethereal and, this is just a positive little thing to try to psych yourself out. No. This is based on the solidness of the character of God. So when God gives you a word. So I want you to say this with me, that if God called me to it, He will help me through it. Come on, say it with me. If God called me to it, He will help me through it. Say it again. If God called me to it, He will help me through it. Once again, if God called me to it, He will help me through it. You know, discovering your acres of diamonds is not just for you to be rich, because money is designed as a servant, but it makes a very terrible master. And money should always have a mission. If your money has no mission, it becomes your master. Let me say that again. If your money has no mission, it becomes your master. Money is designed as a servant, not a master. Notice what the scriptures teaches in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 through 19. Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable, because you know anything could happen. Their trust should be in God. Say that with me. Their trust should be in God. Their trust should be in God. Their trust should be in God. Let's make it personal. Our trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. God's not against you enjoying your stuff. He says, tell them to use their money to do good. It ought to have a mission. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future, so that they may experience true life. See, we find things and people use money as like an anchor. But here are three anchors which people attempted to grasp. The anchor of power, and notice Psalm 33. The anchor of people, Psalm 146. And the anchor of possessions, Psalm 52. Notice that. These are three anchors that people are tempted to grasp. But God is supposed to be our anchor. Because these are terrible anchors, because we are designed to have our hope in God as our anchor. And I love what some of the words of Charles Spurgeon that he said. He says, the more objects that you set your heart upon, the more thorns there are to tear your peace of mind to shreds. Just think about that. The more objects that you set your heart upon, the more thorns there are to tear your peace of mind to shred. And I watch people fall away from God who had been deeply connected to him and committed to him. And oftentimes it's because something happens and they find themselves on uneven footing, still trying to climb to a higher and higher height. But when you're healing, you can't climb. I want you to notice what Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 13 says. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. Level paths, level paths, level paths. Whenever you're recuperating, whenever you're recovering from something, you need to be on level ground. You need level paths for stability. For stability. If you've had an injury to your Achilles tendon, to your knee, to your ankle, the last thing that you want to see is a flight of steps. Trust me. If you injured your leg, the last thing that you want to see is you got to go up a flight of steps. You don't want to see a hill. When you are healing, you need level ground. You don't need another thing to have to traverse and try to climb up. In Psalm 42, David said that God set his feet on a rock and gave him a firm place to stand, a firm place. That's what you need while you're healing. The word set here means to be placed on level footing. To be placed on level footing while you're being restored. If you're coming up out of a situation, a conundrum, if you're dealing with a challenge, stop climbing, just get on level ground so you can heal. On level ground. And sometimes you don't understand that while you're healing, because something is injured on you, and if you go up to unstable ground, you're liable to make the injury worse. So what God will do is that God will send you on detours. You have to understand the children of Israel, they had been in slavery for over 400 years. God had to take them on detours because the journey from Egypt to the promised land could have been made in 3 months, but God sent them on detours for 40 years. You know why? Because he had to let them walk around until some injurious stuff healed on level ground before he brought them to the mountain. He had to just take them on level ground, but he took them on detours, and that's what we need. Are the detours, and trust God in the detours, because life contains detours. It contains detours. Nobody would have planned on it. You know, things happen that you never planned on. Very, very seldomly will your life go exactly according to your plan. I'm just sorry to burst your bubble, but you know, you'd think that you're just one day just going to fall in love and marry, and then they live happily ever after. Psych. What a big fake that is. Life contains detours. Sickness that you didn't see happening. Accidents that you never saw happening. Unplanned pregnancies that you didn't see happening. Financial loss. I mean, if you could see it happen, you wouldn't have invested. I mean, you know, but these are detours. I mean, a breakup of significant relationships, the loss of someone through death that's very close to you, meaningful to you, and you have these detours that take you along the journey. But detours, hear me carefully, are designed to get you there safely. See, if the bridge is out, if they're working on the road here and they've broken up some stuff, they give you a detour, which is a safe passage. It takes you longer, but it gets you there safely. You see, when you're on an airplane, I mean, the flight attendants, they're there primarily for your safety, not to serve you Biscoff cookies and something beverage to drink. Their primary function is for safety. It is for safety, so you have to take the detour to get you there safely, because sometimes the bridge is out ahead, and if the Lord doesn't redirect you through a safe passage, you'll charge on ahead and fall down and get seriously injured because you didn't want to take God's detour. And here's the thing about it, is that God has hidden things on the detour that you actually needed in your life. Sometimes in my travels, I've been inconvenienced by certain things, and it was through the inconvenience that I had a rich experience that the other folks didn't have, because I was inconvenienced. Inconvenienced. You'll be surprised. And the detours that God takes you through will expand you. When I say that they will expand you, I mean that they will give you opportunities for growth. The detours that God takes you through, they will expose you, meaning that he will give you opportunities to see new things and to dream bigger. It will expose you. And number three, it will educate you. It will teach you things that you didn't know so that you can think new thoughts. When the detours that God takes you through, if God takes you through some detours, he's trying to deepen your compassion for other people. And before you went through the detour, you didn't care anything about people. You didn't even know how they felt. But the detour somehow sensitizes you with a compassion. Anybody understand what I'm saying? So God has a reason in taking us the scenic route, off the established path. It takes you longer, but it is a safe journey. And he's actually hidden things. It's really more like a treasure hunt. That when you go on a detour, keep your eyes open to say, Lord, what do you have planted in this experience to grow me? Who am I supposed to meet? You'll be surprised. Sometimes you'll be running late. You'll miss something, but it's because God had assigned somebody to be able to meet with you that shifted the way that you think. You will be absolutely surprised of what God has. The treasures, it's really a treasure hunt. And sometimes your acres of diamonds are the people that are right around you, or a situation that is right around you. It's the ground that's right around you that you have never taken the time to mine. There were some people that, if Jesus didn't have spiritual eyes, he could have taken who we know as Doubting Thomas. Anybody ever heard of Doubting Thomas? And you know, that's all people remember about Thomas, is that he doubted. As though he was just a scumbag and just doubted all of it. You know, so his whole identity became established as the Doubting Thomas. Just naming somebody. And so that branded Thomas as though that's all that he was a doubter. Thomas wasn't all a doubter. You got to be able to have acres of diamond. Thomas was a jewel. He was a jewel. How do we know that? John chapter 11, verse 16. Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's go too and die with Jesus. This man was committed. He wasn't a doubter. He was not confused about who Jesus was. Most people just said he doubted. Oh, but he was really, maybe he doubted at one place, but it's so unfair of people to judge you now for who you used to be. You've come down further on the journey. Now, that's not who you were. Maybe at one point you were, but you've grown now because he's taken you on enough detours. Anybody understanding what I'm saying? In Acts chapter 15, Paul and Barnabas disagreed over John Mark, who happened to be Barnabas' nephew. And they actually, Paul and Barnabas split up over that. They had a heated argument. And from there on, you never heard of Paul and Barnabas again. Working together. But later, the reason that the Apostle Paul didn't want John Mark to go with them is because they were on a mission, and John Mark was young and he was immature, and he's on a mission trip, and he said, you know, bump this, I'm ready to go. And he deserted, he abandoned the journey. So Paul said, forget him. We are not going with your nephew. I know you're trying to do this, but you just take that nepotism someplace else. I don't want him. Anybody else but him. But I want to show you in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 11, notice what Paul writing to Luke said. He says, only Luke is with me. Get Mark, this is John Mark, and bring him with you, for he is useful to me in ministry. Don't judge people always for how they used to be. Don't judge people always for how they used to be. People can grow. They can change. God can take them on the journey, on the detours, and they learn things, and it softens their hearts and it sensitizes them to the things of God. So people grow, people can change. My question to you is, can you see the treasure that's in the people that's closest to you? People that are around you, the people that used to be knuckleheads, the people that used to always be silly, the people that used to always clown around. They grow up. They have gifts. They have talents. The people that were always off color, and doing crazy things. Can you see the treasure in the people who are around you? Here's what I'll say, that God uses the pressure from your past to form the treasure of your future. Your past is a diamond mine. Your past is a diamond mine. Everything you've been through, it is a diamond mine. Because treasure is always hidden, so it has to be unearthed. And my question to you is, what is hidden in your house? Al-Hafed had a lovely farm, wonderful gardens, beautiful orchids, a beautiful wife and children, and excess cash, and couldn't see that he was blessed because he was envying some diamonds in a far place because he had never mined his own property. He was blind to the treasure that was right under his nose. You're talking about breaking out of the box. I wish I had time to teach you about the box. I'll tell you about one side of the box that keeps people locked in from breaking out. One side is called unrecognized resources. Unrecognized resources. Unrecognized resources. They are the treasures that are hidden right under your feet, right within your reach. You don't realize what treasures that God has. And the real treasures are not things, they're people. The real treasures are relationships. The real treasure is wisdom. David would say to Solomon, Solomon, get wisdom. It's like silver, it's like gold. Get wisdom. They are not material things. The real treasures happen to be life experiences and the value and the understanding, the insight that they bring into you, the compassion that they bring into you, the desire for God that they bring, the relationships that are gifts, treasures into your life. And I want you to realize this is that God is going to use something that you already have in order to bless you and to bless others. Acres of diamonds, stuff that's already hidden in you. It's already in you. It's already in you. It's in you. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. It's in your hands. It's in your skill. It's in your DNA. It's in your family story. It's in all of the trauma that you've been through. That's a gold mine. Don't get up out of your trauma. Don't leave the disaster. Don't come out of the storm without the treasure. I'm telling you, the reason that God will send the rain, the wind, and the earthquake is to unearth some things that had been hidden. I'm telling you, wherever there is a shipwreck, there's treasure. There's treasure. There's treasure. That's treasure. This relationship might have been a shipwreck, but there's treasure there. Draw the treasure out of that it makes you a better person. You ought to come out of that situation a better woman, a better man. Because out of the shipwreck, don't leave the shipwreck without the treasure. The acres of diamond, it's right there, and God will show you. And I'm just here to remind you today that whatever it is that you need in your life is use something that you've already got. Stop sitting around mealy-mouthed griping and complaining about what you don't have. Samson took the jawbone of a donkey and killed 3,000 men with it. That was all that he had, was a jawbone of a donkey. It was a skeleton of something that used to be alive. And God took something that was a relic and it became a weapon in his hand. That was the treasure that he needed. David took an old slingshot that he had used to be able to guard the sheep and to keep wolves and things away. And now he took down Goliath, the greatest prize of the Philistine community. And there he was. He just snatched that away. But he used what he had. He didn't give him a machine gun. He didn't give him Saul's armor. He said, I got to use what I've already got. I've got a slingshot. I know how to work this. God's going to use what you've got. And Jesus didn't try to use a membership with a gift card to a special place that would give out free food. He didn't have a Sam's Club membership when he had to feed the audience. He had 2 fish and 5 loaves. God's going to use what you got. He's going to use something that you already have, because there are acres of diamonds that's on the inside of you, and God is just aching to use something that you've already got. And may God show you. May he open up your spiritual eyes. May the eyes of your understanding be enlightened. May God show you what you're working with. May God show you what you are working with. May he show you your hidden treasure. May he show you the people. May he show you the unrecognized resources. May he show you the things that you've got to be able to take as a seed and plant it, sow it, so he can grow it. If you'll sow it, if you'll just be faithful to water it, God will cause the increase. God will cause the increase. God will cause the increase. May you thank God that he's already given you everything. It may not look like much. You may be scratching your head and wondering, God, how in the world am I going to do this? Because God specializes in giving you a vision and an assignment, and all that he will give you is stuff that look like seed. It's like, this is not enough to build that. It's the seed. Sow the seed, grow the tree. And sometimes it's not even that you will finish it, but you'll get it started. And maybe the seeds that you sow will grow the timber that is needed to be able to build the temple. And so, because David had been a man of such bloodshed, God says, I can't let you build my temple. Your son Solomon will build it, but I'll let you gather the resources. You will provide the resources, the seed. Everything you've been working for, David, is for seed. But it is a continuation of my progressive will that is manifested in time, that your son is a part of this. And the treasure that you have amassed, David, is for your son to be able to extend the destiny that started with you, David, is coming down to Solomon. And Solomon became the wealthiest king of his day because his daddy left him with an endowment that was seed when he wasn't graced to build it. And so sometimes you can never know what God is doing just in one generation. That's why he must be known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's why a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So even if I don't finish it, but if I lay the groundwork, if I lay the wisdom, if I lay the treasure of understanding and revelation and connection with God, if I don't do anything but teach my children how to pray, if I don't do anything but teach them how to trust God, the one that has guided my footsteps and led me every step of the way, that when you come to places in life and you don't know what else to do, that you turn to the one who is the answer. That when you don't know what to do, to say, Lord, our eyes are upon you, to teach them how to seek God and how to worship him until a peace rises up in their soul to know that everything is going to be all right. May you give them a heritage in God. It is the greatest thing that you could ever do when they don't know what to do, because they will experience detours and they'll feel confused and they'll get frustrated over the detour because it's taking so long, and you're wondering what in the world I'm doing. While you're there, look around, open up your eyes, because there's something that God has planted on the detour that he wanted to slow you down, so that you would be able to see what he had planted right around you, so that he'd be able to cause you to take a look back and see what he'd already equipped you with. There's something that God was already working with. And I'm looking at people now. You are the wealthy place. It's your heart. It's your mind. It's your spirit. I'm looking at the wealthy place. The place that out of that, that's part of your rivers of your living waters. It flows out of you. You are the wealthy place. The water is here. But he says, speak it. Don't beat it with a rod. Don't get the Bible and try to beat them over the head with it. Speak to them. So that when you're unstable, like Peter, his name was Simon Peter. And they had called him Simon for a long time because Simon was a tall blade of grass. It was a reed, unstable, shifty, going whichever way the wind was. When Jesus wanted to change that, Jesus stopped calling him Simon and referred to him as Peter, rock, stability. He called the stability out while he was still acting unstable. That's faith. when you can see a stable man in a fickle man and speak to the fickle man as if he is solid as a rock. That's why I remind you today that inside every little boy, there's both a king and a fool. And whichever one you address is the one that will answer you. That's the one that will come forth. And if you keep speaking to little boo-boo as though he is a fool, you'll have a grown fool on your hand. But if you speak to the king in him, the king will emerge and rise up with royal character and dignity. But it takes spiritual eyes to be able to see the treasure that God has planted right in your own home, in your own environment, in your own hometown, in your own circle of influence. He has already given you acres of diamonds. May God open your eyes so that you're able to see the treasure that is hidden right under your nose. And may I remind you of this as I close. There's a miracle right under your nose. It's in your mouth. Even his word. And it is what you unleash out of your mouth. Speak to the rock that causes a flow of water to come out that will not only feed the people but also the livestock that's with you. It'll be more than enough. And when you are thankful, grateful for the seed, God will give you a harvest that'll bring even greater joy to your life. So be grateful. I pray you got something out of the word of the Lord today. I really do. Hallelujah to the Lamb of God.
We hope that you enjoyed that message. Don't forget to like and subscribe and then press the notification bell so that you don't miss another one of our videos. And if you want to partner with us, click the Give Now button. Thank you for what you do.